Matheson reporting. Now, it's been called the Big Bang for the legal profession and Tesco Law. It's a controversial plan to relax the rules for legal firms, allowing them to raise capital from outside investors and let businesses like banks or supermarkets offer a full range of legal services. For these new solicitors, Law Society of Scotland's admission ceremony in Edinburgh on Friday, it could mean major changes in the legal landscape in which they'll work. Critics of the so-called Tesco Law say the independence of the Law Society could be undermined. The Society is the regulatory body for Scotland's 10,500 solicitors, and it backs the plans. But after threats of a split within the profession, the Law Society is now going to hold a referendum, hoping to confirm support for its existing position. Well, the Politics Show spoke to Robert Pirrie, who's Chief Executive of the Society of Writers to Her Majesty's Signet, a centuries-old Scottish legal association.
It's caused a great deal of controversy. There are very strong views on both sides of the argument. It has to some extent polarised the profession. On the one hand, the bigger firms who may have the benefit of a Big Bang effect against the smaller high street firms. So it is certainly polarising opinion within the profession. The first bone of contention is that of independence. Traditionally, solicitors have been in business with other solicitors and only other solicitors. And that's been seen as a fundamental way in which they've been independent, and therefore the only relationship of importance is that with the client. The changes that are proposed would introduce the possibility of lawyers entering into partnership and business relationship with third parties. These may be external investors, shareholders, or other professionals with whom lawyers would be in business. And those who are against the change have concerns that that would prejudice the independence, the traditional independence of solicitors, and would introduce the possibility of solicitors being open to pressure from investors and owners of their business.
The second one being?
The second one is what might be called a business risk to solicitors, which in turn has implications for the public's access to legal advice. And that is the risk that if big players, it may be a supermarket, it may be a bank, a larger organisation, were to move into an area and were to cherry pick the best and most profitable legal business, such as residential conveyancing or perhaps wills and succession, that would have a serious effect on law firms, traditional law firms.
Well, that was Robert Pirrie of the WS Society with me to discuss the pros and cons of so-called Tesco Law. The President of the Law Society of Scotland, Ian Smart, and the Head of the Govan Law Centre, Mike Dailly. Ian Smart, first of all, you're the President of the Law Society, but where do you stand personally on these proposals?
Personally, I've always been a supporter of the proposals. What Robert says is true of private practice, but 27% of members of the Law Society at the moment are in businesses not owned by lawyers. They work for the Crown Office, they work for local government, they work for Standard Life, the Royal Bank, the big financial institutions in Scotland. Nobody's suggesting that they're not independent and ethical lawyers in the process.
Why do you think these changes are necessary and a good idea?
It's just simply because of a changing market. We're in a different market for legal services. Our biggest firms are huge businesses. The largest firm in Scotland has a turnover of £70 million, employs more than 300 lawyers. They need to be able to access capital to develop their business in the way that any other business can.
Why are you against legal businesses growing?
Well, the Tesco models actually came from 2004, which was a report in England. And since then we've had the meltdown of our financial markets. So the idea of deregulating the profession in Scotland is discredited. And everybody is now talking about more invasive regulation. So ultimately it's based upon an outdated and a flawed business model.
What's gone wrong south of the border?
Well, what's happened is that this original idea, it's just coming into England later this year, but the original basis of this idea was to basically deregulate and open up the profession to corporate interests being able to control lawyers. What I'm saying is, around the world, big is now bad, and around the world, the financial sectors are saying that we need to have smaller units of operation. So what we're doing, effectively, in Scotland is we're ignoring the fact that this will take us to the problems that we had in the financial services market before the big crash in 2007. And the other thing that's really important, Glenn...
Well, let's deal with that first of all. Isn't that possible?
No, I mean, Mike's right that clearly this has to be a regulated market. Legal services are a regulated market everywhere in the world. Been a regulated market in Scotland for more than 60 years. There would still be regulation of these new businesses in the way that there is regulation of the existing businesses. It would still be subject to the same rules to protect clients' interests, to make sure clients were protected against any form of impropriety.
But how could the top lawyers in a firm resist the pressures or the influence of those who are putting up the money to grow the business?
It's a question of in what way they resist. They are still lawyers. They are still regulated as lawyers. They still have to belong to observe the Law Society of Scotland's Code of Conduct, and they would be independently disciplinable. It wouldn't be enough for them to say we were following orders. They would lose their practicing certificates.
Don't you trust your own regulator to ensure that these changes are properly administered and not subject to the sort of pressures that you're suggesting?
I've spent a long time suing banks on behalf of ordinary customers up and down Scotland. Do you think, Glenn, if I worked for a bank, if I was controlled by a bank, if this law came to pass, I would be able to do that in the future?
But he's saying they wouldn't be controlled by the bank because the regulation would prevent that control.
No, I mean, that's not the case. What would happen is that you would have a bank or a huge multinational company being able to own a legal firm and basically control a legal firm. And that's what's the worry. We've effectively had 500 years of independence in terms of our legal profession in Scotland. And what the Legal Services Bill does is it seeks to end that in terms of Tesco Law so that lawyers won't be able to act independently. They'll be subject to the control of big business. And also the bill enables the Scottish Government to dictate to the legal profession what number of non-lawyers will be on the council. And that means you've got the Scottish Government having a direct ability to have undue influence on the profession in our country. You
sold the pass?
No, I can deal with this, the second point in a moment, but the key point, the first point, is we already have 27% of the membership of the Law Society of Scotland already working in non-lawyer owned businesses. That's been the case. It's a growing part of the market. Nobody's
not against that, are you?
No, but it's about control. It's about the Scottish Government being able to have undue influence on the profession.
Just deal with that.
The Crown Office. The ultimate control of the Crown Office lies in the hand of the Lord Advocate, who serves at the whim of the First Minister, a political appointee. Nobody suggests that undermines the ethics of Procurator Fiscals in dealing with individual cases.
I thought it was up to the Queen who got to be Lord Advocate.
No. The Lord Advocate is appointed by the Queen, but on the recommendation of the First Minister. If I can just turn to the second point, there are changes proposed to the regulatory scheme of the Law Society and the legislation as well. It is to increase the number of lay people on the Society's council, but these people would still be appointed by the lawyers. They're not being appointed by the government.
I was wondering, from a point of view of somebody who might actually use legal services, what does this matter? I mean, if we're going to have Tesco or other supermarkets running law firms or providing legal services, might that not give us, as consumers, more choice and a cheaper deal?
No, because the only interest in this whole policy is from 4 big firms in Scotland. Now, a couple of years ago, when there was...
You don't think the supermarkets will be interested?
No, I think the supermarkets may be interested. But let me give you an example. The supermarkets have been found by the Competition Commission to be engaged in price fixing. They have done that on a number of occasions. The banks, for example, they talk about free and credit banking. Do you know that the banks give you artificially low interest rates on a current account, and that gains them £4 billion per year? They hit you with bank charges, which gains them with about £3 billion. What I'm saying to you is that big business doesn't engage in competition in the way that you often think it does.
Might the big firms come in, hoover up the juiciest business and leave the rest to the wee firms, eventually putting them out of business?
The very biggest firm that we have in Scotland doesn't even do private client work. It's a commercial enterprise serving the commercial sector. They simply want the opportunity to compete on level terms with their competitors and the other competitors in England and Wales who have the advantage of this liberalised market.
Might your referendum of lawyers in Scotland, though, not reveal that you've got it wrong?
We have the confidence to put the matter to the membership. They will decide in a secret ballot.
Ian Smart, President of the Law Society in Scotland, Mike Dailly from the Govan Law Centre, thanks very much indeed. Perhaps we'll come back to it when you're having the referendum towards the end of the month.